Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes machines make mistakes. Did anyone hear about that Microsoft Twitter bot that they deployed about 2 years ago? This is interesting. So Microsoft, like Amazon and Google and Facebook, are trying to do a lot with artificial intelligence, right? So Microsoft created a bot that would interact with people. If you tweeted at it, it would tweet back. They pulled it after a day. Why? Because the bot learned, because people were tweeting at it using some very bad words, that's how you're supposed to react. And before you know it, you can Google this, the Microsoft Twitter bot was tweeting very offensive terms, particularly towards black people. So even machines make mistakes. Certainly people do as well, particularly when we get distracted. People think that they're multitasking, right? Multitasking is a myth. Neurologists and neuroscientists will tell you that if you switch off of something, it takes you about 5 times as long to get back. Now, I'm not saying if your loved one calls, don't pick up the phone, but it is very difficult to do deep work, to really focus when you're bouncing around. You're much more likely to make mistakes. There's a great book called Flow by Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. I think I pronounced it right. It's a very difficult name. Has anyone heard of this one? Fabulous book. He researched athletes, chess players, musicians, writers to see when they did their best work. Do you think it was when they were constantly checking their phones, doing social media? No. It's when they had 3, 4, 5 hours of virtually uninterrupted time. Now, I'm not completely naive. I know that it is difficult to often get that, especially when we're so busy, right? You set up time, people come over, hey, do you have some time to help me? But I'm telling you, there is a lot to be said for, here's a tip with productivity, book time on your own calendar for you. Do you all use shared calendars at work? So people can set up a meeting with you, right? But not if you have something booked. So it makes a lot of sense to focus as much as you can. If you're bouncing around, I've made some absolutely silly mistakes because I was multitasking. Ignore the audience. I've seen people make this mistake as well. I'm a big believer in sort of approaching visualizations from a pyramid point of view, especially the interactive ones. Does the president or CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company need to know every single sale in a quarter? Probably not, right? Or the chief finance officer, the CFO. So maybe that person or those people are only interested in top-level numbers. What are our sales compared to last quarter? If I'm the head of human resources, what's our turnover rate compared to last quarter? If you give people too much or too little information, they might ignore it. So that's more of an art than a science, but one of the questions that I typically ask on a speaking gig is, who's my audience? Because I'm giving you lessons for how to create these things. If you were chief executives, we wouldn't be talking about those things because those folks typically have people like you who do the real work. The last speaking gig that I gave in Chicago was like that with executives, so know your audience. Companies like Facebook and Netflix will introduce products that they know have some bugs, but they want feedback from people, okay? So it's not a bad idea. Depending on what you're doing, if it's confidential information, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's not a bad idea to get other people involved, right? Hey, Alice, what do you think of this? Is this clear to you? Just because it's clear to us doesn't mean that it's clear to other people. In fact, I had this happen on this particular book, The Visual Organization. I wrote a case study on one of the companies, and to me it was crystal clear. And I love my editor. She's called me out a few times when I thought I was so smart. She said, you're wrong. And she sent me the link. I said, okay, I trust you. It was clear to me, but it wasn't clear to her. So I rewrote the chapter and made it better.